Hello and welcome back to another video where we will be continuing to look at an alternate alternate future of the world. And if you have not seen the last episode, watch that now so you know what happened at the end of it. So I'll give you some time to go off and watch that one. So 3, 2, 1. Okay. World War III started in the last one. It started with some rebellions in former Russian territory and North Korea, and then that led to World War III between the Beijing-Moscow Association and the Democratic Defense Organization, as well as the PDTO. But anyway, we will be going over to Russia first. So there should be some navy here. That was just a mistake in the way that I did things. Let me put that up here. Okay, good. All right. So, Russia will be moving up against Finland in mainly around St. Petersburg, or they might have renamed it to Leningrad. Yeah, they probably renamed it to Leningrad. So, they will be protecting Leningrad, and they'll also fight right here, and they'll also move in against Estonia, these are united, so they're attacking Estonia, and they'll also attack Belarus, and also capture Rostov, and they'll even be able to quickly move in and capture this exclave, as they were quite prepared for this. And they'll seize some naval assets and put some ships out in the Sea of Azov. But the Georgian and Ukrainian navy will be able to push back against the limited Russian navy right here. But they will still survive, just be pushed back. And I need to remember to call this country Estonia, and this Belarus Kaliningrad, or the Union, whatever. And so Finland will push back, and now we can move over to Georgia, where Russia will be able to capture Abkhazia, and also capture a bit of the northern coast and move over to Azerbaijan. And Iran will be able to capture this southern area and be able to slightly move into this area. And this area is heavily militarized, as they don't want this to be encircled, as there is also a heavy military presence in this left over from when they were fighting Armenia. And the Russian and Iranian navy will be able to push back the small Azerbaijani navy in the Caspian Sea. And then we will move over to Libya, which is quite prepared for this war, as they will move over and capture this major city in the desert, as well as using special forces units to move over and capture parts of the desert. But they will be pushed back a little bit in the north, which is where all the people and development is. But this also serves some strategic importance for East Libya. And then we will move over to Vietnam, where a rival government split up. And so China will move in and capture northern areas of both Vietnam and Laos with the help of Myanmar. And this part is, they are separated from this, so they have to transport everything by boat. And quite a few of the major ports were down here where the rival government split up. So that is pretty difficult for them. And so they will be able to set up a naval presence here and even split up these two groups. But they will move naval groups over to here and be able to connect up and then fight China a little bit. And Vietnam will be able to, or South Vietnam, I should say, but they're still communist. But they will be able to capture more and more land. As initially this wasn't that popular, but more and more people are going to move on the side of Vietnam, and they will begin infiltration into Cambodian territory using similar guerrilla tactics, but in a more modern sense, as they used during the Vietnam War, but now in the South. Or, well, yeah, the Viet Cong were in the South. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Viet Cong wasn't the term for the entirety of North Vietnam forces. There's just these insurgent groups in South Vietnam. But now we can move over to the main front of Asia, and China will attempt to capture Pyongyang, and they will be successful, but they will not be able to hold it for long, as South Korea mounts a successful counteroffensive, and then move in and capture this major city. And they will also have a large naval conflict all around in East Asia. And so Chinese forces will move out and begin fighting Japanese and South Korean forces. And Japan will link up with Taiwan. They probably would have already had this. It's just this map, it's all black. I will fix that soon. Don't worry. After this war, that will be fixed. But so they will capture these areas, and they'll also put naval areas all the way up here with Russia. And there's probably not that many ships up here, but there will be a little bit of fighting, like right here. And Russia will expand this front line a little bit and fight up against this. Yeah, but China will move forces into here. And then Japan will also respond in the same way and expand this front line to most of the entire coast of East Asia. Then we will move over to Pakistan and Gujarati, whatever. I don't know what to call this country at all. But Pakistan should have this much control. That is just an error on my part. But Pakistan will have a pretty easy time invading into the Gujarat country, as they joined a little too late to get that much of a Democratic Defense, or a DDO, forces in here. But eventually reinforcements will arrive, and they will mount a bit of a counteroffensive, and then the front will stalemate, as they're also using guerrilla tactics, as they have a relatively small army, but they also have the DDO forces helping them. And South Africa will be able to successfully capture the capital of Mozambique, as these two weren't really that prepared for a war, they're definitely not prepared to fight one alone without these AIP countries. they were planning on them joining them and having it just be one front, but so their war plans aren't going to be that useful. But they will be able to capture this. There's some military in this encirclement, but not that much. And they'll also move down here as there are more forces, more South African forces over here to capture southern Mozambique. And Russian forces will be able to move into the Baltic Union, is what I will call this country, as these are the actual Baltic languages. This is Uralic, but so they will be able to move in as the Baltic Union. They kind of united a little too early. They didn't do that good of a job, so they kind of failed at the military part. But they won't be able to get that far, as other DEO forces will help them out. But Russia will launch an offensive into this northern area of Ukraine. But Ukraine will mount an offensive with the goal of capturing this major city, and they will get relatively close to that goal, but they won't be able to do that just yet, and they'll also expand this to over here with the goal of hurting the logistics of this Rostov offensive. And both Azerbaijan and Georgia will be able to mount an offensive and capture this major city, and they'll even be able to capture this major city as well, and push over to attempt to encircle this offensive. And so they will evacuate this offensive, which will allow Azerbaijan and Georgia to push up, but Russia will be able to push back against the offensive a little more. And then Azerbaijan's navy will be completely obliterated, but Russia does not have enough naval presence here, enough ships here to be able to attempt a naval landing, so Azerbaijan is safe for now. And then over in Libya, East Libya will continue their offensive and also be able to capture this major city, which was West Libya's logistics hub for the southern area, their southern logistics hub, and they'll also capture this, and this will lead to them East Libya being able to capture all of this land in southern Libya. Let me just make it look a little nicer. So they will be looking like that. And then they will be able to repel the northern offensive, or well, more so West Libya will evacuate, and then move in a little bit in the north. So they will have their own northern offensive. But the Greek navy is a lot more powerful than the East Libyan navy, so they will be able to help out the West Libyan navy and push back the East Libyan navy quite a bit. I don't know why I can't speak today. And I can basically just fill in all of the Mediterranean and Black Seas as blue. And the Iranian Navy and the Navy of the Gulf states will fight back and forth as they are roughly equally matched. But Pakistan will divert some of their forces over to the Arabian/Persian Gulf, and with their help, they will be able to win this battle for the Gulf. Or, well, they will be able to capture quite a lot and beat their navy back a lot and make it just these two pockets. And there will be some fighting over it with Yemen, and Yemen will move into this area and move up, and Saudi Arabia will launch an offensive from over here, just following along supply lines and then reinforcing them in an attempt to get over to where their major cities are. It will end up looking something like this, but similar to East Libya, Yemen will be able to launch a successful offensive in the deserts of Arabia, as the Saudi Arabian forces are definitely more focused on the west than the eastern desert, but they still know how to fight in the desert. So they're not completely incompetent, and they'll even be able to push back the offensive slightly. And then the East Asian front will, or the East Asian theater will turn into one front line in the South China Sea, and they'll also put military ships here to be able to fight South Vietnam, with it looking like this. And China will launch an offensive in an attempt to capture some. It more looks like this, but those bits of artificial islands that China had owned will be captured, and they will attempt to get them back. And so they will have the naval equivalent of a spearhead, but that will be beaten back a bit to more reasonable extents. But China will be able to successfully reach Taiwan, but I am now realizing that for some reason Taiwan does not have a capital. I do not know why. Let me fix that. Yeah, I don't know how I missed that for this long, and I have no idea why. It's probably the list I used just didn't have Taiwan, or maybe I misread the Republic of China as the People's Republic of China. I don't know, but let me add the capital. And so Taiwan is a little scared, but they know that Japan is probably not gonna let them invade Taiwan. And South Taiwan will be able to continue to advance, but as South Vietnam only has about 40% of the popularity in Vietnam, they will not be able to. North Vietnam will be able to launch a successful counteroffensive against them, but China will be able to move further into Vietnam and Laos. But then Thailand will, interestingly enough, join the side of the Beijing-Moscow Association. Before the war, they did not they still, in before the war and to this day, Thailand did not have great relations with either side, but they are simply joining this war just to capture territory. That is their only motive. And so they will be able to capture the capital city of Laos and capture these two major cities of Cambodia and be able to put their naval vessels out into this gulf. I think this is actually called the Gulf of Thailand. I have no it just feels like it would be. I have no idea. But this will cause very major defeats for the PDTO in Southeast Asia, with South Vietnamese forces even being able to capture Cambodia, and this will lead to Thailand being able to meet up with them and not fight, even though they're not the most cooperative. But this will lead to Cambodia completely surrendering, and this will lead to rebel forces being able to capture this major city and move up to this point on this very thin front line, and then China being able to capture, I forget what the capital of Vietnam is called. It starts with an H. Hanoi, right. Hanoi. Okay, and then the remaining forces of Vietnam will surrender, and then Laos will see that they are that it is hopeless for them, and so they will surrender too. And so this is the first major front, or the first front that has been completely closed in this war. And this will allow for the navies of the Beijing-Moscow Association and Thailand to be able to capture the waters around all of Southeast Asia, looking something like this, or this, or this, that. And then Thailand will finally allow Beijing-Moscow Association troops to go through their borders into this front, and they'll capture this major city before being stopped by the land forces of countries that were still mostly here. Obviously, they were in Southeast Asia, but a good chunk of them were still at home, and so they have moved them over to here. Well, they still have troops at home. They're not completely defenseless, but moved more of their forces over to here. But then a completely war-changing event will take place. That even though this is already very clearly a world war taking place in 4 out of the 7 continents, which Antarctica doesn't count, so 4 out of the 6 continents, which is more than half. I don't know if I said this is a war-changing event yet, but the Anti-Imperialist Pact will join on the side of the AIP will join on the side of the Beijing-Moscow Association. So, this might seem like an obvious thing that was going to happen, but this definitely was not guaranteed to happen, as the government after the Second American Civil War was quite anti-war, but they did start to kind of maintain that with the intervention in Mexico, and that's about it. But they have helped out their side of the war in various places, like in Sudan and the Western Sahara, and they've also helped the wars of the Beijing-Moscow Association, which I think has just been Central Asia, or well, yeah, India. They intervened in India slightly. So the American public was pretty worried that the interventionist pro-war thing was coming back, and so the president, which the new government has maintained democracy with 4-year terms and a term limit of 2. They maintained that from the old system. But the president that was in power at this time was at the end of his 2nd year, and he felt that if the Democratic Defense Organization were to win this, that it would be disastrous for the outcome of the world. And so, even though he knew the American public probably would not support it at first, she has chosen to join the war on the side of the Beijing-Moscow Association. And so they will send out their navy and begin to send their forces all over the world. And they will be able to kick out the Canadians from the Pacific Ocean and have a naval landing in Victoria Island. And so they will launch an offensive in British Columbia and as well in Ontario by this peninsula, and in Nova Scotia and this peninsula area. And then American and Egyptian forces arriving in Libya will allow for the rapid advancement, along with the help of Algeria, who also is, I believe, in the modern day, the 3rd strongest military power, and they've fallen behind a little bit with the East African Federation, South Africa, and Egypt. Or, well, Egypt is already number 1. But they had fallen a few places, but they're still definitely they're still definitely a formidable force. And so this will allow for the rapid advancement against West Libya, and then the capturing of this major city, as well as naval groups from Egypt and Palestine to come over and help out with East Libya and being able to achieve naval superiority around these 2 major cities. And they will implement a strategy of having many small naval landings and then moving up to connect up the front. And with this strategy, they will be able to capture the capital city of Libya, or West Libya, and with this, their military will pretty much completely collapse, and then this will lead to West Libya officially surrendering all of their forces, and the East Libyan and others' forces to be able to enter into Libya. I mean, Tunisia. Sorry. A lot of names. I got mixed up with West and East Libya. I guess Tunisia is northern Libya now. And Egypt is eastern Libya. And Chad is southern Libya. Anyway. So they will move into Morocco. And this is not accurate. The Spanish turned the Canaries into a pretty strong naval fortress. And they have a lot stronger navy than any of these guys, which is Western Sahara and Mauritania. But they will be able to move into Morocco and Spanish Morocco and capture this major city and be able to advance along in the south of Morocco. But the Basque country and Catalonia have been turned into military fortresses, and the Basque country is already in pretty defensible terrain. So this will prevent them from being instantaneously obliterated by Spain and France, which they would be if they were on their own, but they're not. But Algeria will connect up with the Catalonian Navy, which would not control this much. More like that. This. But they will be able to supply Catalonia this way. Not so much for the Basque country, so they are gonna have to just try and hold on for as long as they can with the military forces they do have in their country, which is very dense. They have a lot of military in their country for their size, and that is foreign military from the AIP. They are not that powerful on their own, like I said. And the American and Cuban Navy will be able to link up and fight the Dominican one. In the north, they will link up. And they'll also link up with Venezuela. And the Dominican Navy will link up with the Central American Navy. But America and Mexico will begin their invasion into Central America, being able to capture this major city and move over and attempt to isolate Belize and northern Guatemala. But instead, they will capture this major city, which is not too bad. I mean, the president of the U.S., her and her government were definitely prepared for this war, but not all that prepared, as the American public, like I said, is still so far not liking the idea of this war. Or they like the idea of winning this war, but they don't like the idea of fighting this war. So they will only support it if they continue to win, which they have been so far. So that's good for them. But I am going to end it here. I think, maybe, hopefully, I'm planning on doing this in 2 parts. If that's not enough, then I can add another part. But the title will probably say part 1 of 2, unless I change it later when I have to do 3 parts. Hopefully I don't do that. I don't have to do that, as I've been recording for about an hour, and I don't think too much of that has been wasted. Hopefully most of that will be able to stay in the video. But I will see you in another video next time. And remember, watch some of my other videos if you like this. And if you're just seeing this series for the first time, the earlier episodes were kind of bad. So you could probably skim through like the first 3 episodes, but from there it gets better. So, but yeah, I will see you next time.